Baragani, it's great to see you once again here at Papa Alkebulan on Earth Mama TV. And before I begin, I just want to acknowledge this great woman, this great sister, Rolanda Wilkins, Earth Mama. She's kind of like in the same vein as I don't know, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman. She's rescuing people. She's rescuing young African American women, and that seems to be her mission. I talked about myself as being epistemologically, self-consciously black. Well, she is too. So I just want to acknowledge, and she's actually arranging things right now as we're talking. I wish she would come over here, and I wish she would come over here and get in the picture just for a split second. Can you come over? Can you come over? I just want everybody to see you. I want everybody to see my friend Rolanda.
Hey, family.
Rolanda. All right. Now look at that face. Isn't she beautiful? All right. Now get back on.
Okay.
Today we're going to talk about who are the Hebrews, and coincidentally enough, as I was on my way to Earth Mama Studios, I was accosted by a black Hebrew Israelite. Those people are worse than the Jehovah's Witness. You know that. So I mean, I was talking. I didn't want to get into a conversation with the young brother because he obviously did not know what I'm about to reveal today. So our topic today is, who are the Hebrews? So I want to start with this man. Can anybody guess who this is? Okay, can guess? This is Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. I heard this quote by Dr. Naim Akbar, and who is a psychologist, and he was talking about Sigmund Freud, and he said Sigmund Freud never met a sane person, including himself. And look at him. He looks kind of stoned out because he was a coke addict. You know, while he was psychoanalyzing people, he was on cocaine. But in between those periods, he had moments of clarity. He was a Hebrew of the Jewish religion, and he was in Germany, and he wrote this book in his latter days entitled Moses and Monotheism by Sigmund Freud. This is the last book, and it's I think about 3 or 4 essays that he wrote on this subject, where he connected. He saw that Moses was obviously related in some way to the Per-Ah Akhenaten, and he was saying that Moses was either Akhenaten or that Moses was strongly influenced by Akhenaten. So he wrote this book, Moses and Monotheism. This is the copy that I had, but as I was looking around, this looks more established. It's a hardback book, and as Dr. Asa Hilliard said, hardback is not our back. We always using paperback. So here, Moses and Monotheism, and here you also notice that a lot of times pictures of Moses, he has like horns. And it included that in this book. Well, here is the Per-Ah Akhenaten. So many disparaging things have been said about him, but what he was trying to do, he was trying to return the people to the time of the Aten. It was a time of higher spiritual awareness. People's senses were more in tune. People were not just operating on 5 senses, they were operating on 360 senses. 180 which have been designated as feminine, 180 that have been designated as masculine. And so he had an issue with the priesthood of Ammon, the Hanuti. They wanted to keep, collecting money and charging for various things, and he wanted to do away with that. He actually even moved his his capital to a place called Amarna, which is situated, right in the middle of Kemet. And from the mountains there, you can see the horizon. You can see the Aten rising, at dawn. So this picture I took in the Cairo Museum. And so here is Akhenaten again. And focusing on the Aten, the rays of the Aten, reaching out to the people. And if you study anything about the sun, you know that the sun is pure life giving. It gives you the green of the plants, the photosynthesis of the plants. And on some of these statues, some of these, they have little ankhs. See, there's an ankh coming out from the hand, showing you that the Aten gives you life. Here he is again. And, he just looks like, in many cases, a typical African. A lot of times people, attempt to say that the ancient Egyptians, they came from someplace else, and then they created the civilization. No, it's pure African civilization. So here's some more of Akhenaten. And here he is again with his wife and some of his daughters. Now, people say the reason why he looked like this is because he had a glandular disease. But that glandular disease would have prevented him from having children. But he had 6 daughters. And here is his wife, Nefertiti, and she is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. And, some of the representations of her do not look African. And those are the ones that Egyptology has latched onto. But most of the other ones, they look just like him. Most of the other statues, they look just like him. And see, one of the things I like about this is that he is a loving dad. Akhenaten, and here is the Aten with the ankhs coming out. And I was watching Minister Farrakhan speak at the Million Man March, and he was talking about the significance of the number 13, because he where they were speaking, they were at the Jefferson Memorial and they were at the Lincoln Memorial, and he was saying that Jefferson was the 3rd president, Lincoln was the 16th president. You add that together, it's 19. It's 19 rays of the sun. And I jumped up and went out to my garage where I had my books, and I found this picture, and I counted, and sure enough, there were 19 rays of the sun. Now, it's not always depicted that way, but just for that day, it helped me to understand this a little better. So, what Sigmund Freud was focusing on was, in his book, Moses and Monotheism, the teachings of Per-Ah, the great house, Akhenaten. All right. Now, Sigmund Freud had an affinity with ancient Kemet, because these are pictures, the next few pictures that you're going to see are pictures from his office. Here, he has a whole bunch of Kemetic figurines. He was obsessed with them. And now this is some more of his office. And you know that, he had people that were on the couch as he was psychoanalyzing them, asking them questions, trying to figure out what was going on with them. But above that picture was this picture of Abu Simbel. So while people were getting psychoanalyzed, here's Abu Simbel looking down on him. And now, I'm not sure, sisters and brothers, if this is a reenactment or, because this one is in color, but, they've tried to maintain the original, and here they kept this in here. Abu Simbel. This is where the Ramses statues were actually moved to. They were relocated. They actually weren't in this original position. And if you go to Kemet today, in the southern part of Kemet or Egypt, it's this place called Wow, it just jumped out of my head. It'll come back to me, but the actual location, Aswan. So when you go to Aswan, the furthest tip are these two temples, one livicated to the Per-Ah, Ramesu the second, and you know, just a few blocks, or you know, maybe about, I don't know, 100 yards away is maybe not even that length is a statue livicated to his favorite wife, Nefertari. So, but anyway, getting back to this is in Sigmund Freud's office, and these are the statues. This is the picture. This is actually how it looks. And these were relocated because they dammed. You know, they created the Aswan High Dam, and they ended up relocating people that were there, and they submerged temples, but they wanted to save these, and so they moved them to this place. You know, it was a worldwide effort. A lot of people were involved: the United States, Russia, Egypt, various construction entities to bring this together. And you can find this. You can actually search for this. You know, the reconstruction of Abu Simbel or something like that. I first saw it in the National Geographic magazine. All right, so getting back, see, his place is just full of comedic things. He was really focused on it. Here's his desk. Wow. That man had Egypt on his mind. All right, see, more. I mean, here is Aset and Horu, the Divine Mother and Child. He had all of these on his desk. Look, in the bookcase, all of these things. He was fixated on it, and so it caused him to write the book, Moses and Monotheism. All right, now I want to talk about my friend, Brother Stephen Mailer. Stephen Mailer has been researching the Hebrew story for about 36 years. You know, he's an Egyptologist. He was a curator at the Rosicrucian Museum. He has degrees in women's studies. I forgot what his master's is in. So he's livicated a lot of his life to the study to find out what was going on in ancient Kemet. And so his second book is From Light into Darkness. And that title refers to that there was a time, during the time of the Aten, was a time of enlightenment, when most humans were enlightened. They were operating on 360 senses. But now we are crippled. We only operate on 5 senses. So that's what the title implies, From Light into Darkness. This is his teacher, Dr. Abdul Hakim Awiyan. So he passed away in 2008. I found out about him in 2010 while viewing the documentary, The Pyramid Code. And I highly recommend that documentary to you. It gives you a different way of viewing, a different paradigm of viewing the ancient Kemet, the ancient civilization, etc. So let's just find out a little bit about Dr. Hakim. He was an indigenous wisdom keeper of ancient Al-Kemetian wisdom tradition. He was a Sufi master. He believed that a new age was dawning. And as the other contemporary indigenous wisdom keepers worldwide, the time had come to share this sacred and this sacred and carefully guarded information with us all. So, at first they didn't just reveal this to people, but now they feel like the time is right. People under the Mayan tradition, people on, a lot of indigenous wisdom keepers are actually opening the books and loosing the seals, as they were. He was widely sought after to lead many spiritual groups during his more than 30 years working as a tour guide. Those who were fortunate enough to travel with him were introduced to an entirely different story of Egypt's amazing and powerful past than they had read in their textbooks. Now, Hakim grew up at the pyramids. He used to play under the tunnels. Those were his playground, and he began to look at the figures, the Medu Neter, the Suf language on the monuments and temples, and he made up in his mind, I'm going to learn those things. He went and got his master's degree in Egyptology, and then he got introduced to the ancient tradition of the Sufs. Now, many people think that Sufism comes from Persia, but they explain the tradition where it actually originates in ancient Kemet. So that's a brief thing on Dr. Abdul Hakim Awayan. Now here's Stephen with Hakim, and Stephen was proud. Hakim was proud of the two books that Stephen had written. The other one being from the land of Osiris. So here they are, and here I am in Kemet. We were actually at a Galabea party. Our group had a Galabea party. We were on a boat, and I bought this great Galabea, in Cairo. And Stephen is actually wearing one of Hakim's Galabea that was given to him by the family. So here we're making the Rasta symbol, and Stephen kind of looked at me funny, but when I take pictures with my friends, that's what I do. All right, so I'm going to move on. So now in the Cometian way of thinking, there were 5 stages of the sun. The first one was Kepler, the scarab beetle, the dweller, which was the dawn, Ra, the ram, the stubborn at noon, the mature man, the wise man, the early afternoon, 4, Atan, the old man, the wiser, late afternoon into twilight, and then Amen, which had no image, the hidden, which was when the sun went down into darkness. So that not only went for the day, but it also went for the ages of time. So their tradition going back 65,000 years. I know that sounds like a fantastic number, but there's a lot of things that haven't been revealed to us because people want to keep us in a narrow frame of mind, a myopic frame of mind on how this whole civilization came about. All right, now remember our title is Who Were the Hebrews? So in Stephen's book, From Light to Darkness, he includes the Aleph, the Hebrew letter Aleph, and here it is again, and he has the other one, the S. And when you look at the Aleph, it looks like the netter. Let me go back to it. So you see that there, and you see that. So netters are what Westerners call the gods and goddesses, but they were actually principles of the divine that were actually senses within the human experience. So you have Het-Haru in you, you have Wasir in you, you have Hor, or what many people call Horus, or Heru. You have Ma'at in you, etc. So all of those Neteru, Shu, Geb, Tefnut, they're all a part of you. And it is our job on this earth plane to get those things revealed to us. Moving on. So here, this is the letter, the S. And so he says, the commission sign for the neter can be seen used 3 times in the Hebrew letter. And so when we look at this and we compare it, this is how you would write neteru or neter as plural. And here this cup underneath, or this basket underneath, is neb. So this is Lord of the neteru. That's what that's essentially saying. And so Stephen includes this in his book. And this came from Aswan. So, and we're familiar with the term El Shaddadi. This is where El Shaddadi comes from the Medu-Neter, from the Suf language. All right. I talked about this in another time. This is how the languages evolve. Canaanite, Ugaritic, Phoenician, Aramaic, Syriac, Hebrew, and it goes on down. And Phoenicians brought the alphabet to the Latins and to the Greeks. Phoenicians.
Wow.
So here's another, hopefully Stephen won't mind me using some of the pictures from his book, but here's Hakim, and he's pointing to Mes. Mes means rebirth, and it's 3 jackal skins. And essentially what you're saying is, jackal is dead, jackal is dead, jackal is dead. Because people had a fear of the jackal when they would bury, the body of a deceased person. Jackals would dig it up, and so then they started making tombs and things to keep the jackal out. And so that's what this represents. It's 3 jackal skins. Jackal is dead. Jackal is dead. Jackal is dead. Kind of a protection. So here, but now I mentioned Amarna. And here is Hakim in the tomb of Ra-Moses. Get that? Ra-Moses. And who was Ra-Moses? Ra-Moses was one of 2 prime ministers, or what's been called viziers, of Akhenaten. So, there's a very small jump from Ra-Moses to Moses. So here he's showing him something in the tomb. And what is he showing? He's showing here the 12 tribes of Israel. Oh my. Yes, the 12 tribes of Israel. And he's also showing, this is Ra-Moses. They went in his tomb, they never found his body. And here it is again. So within the tomb at Amarna is the 12 tribes. And then we went to a place called the Ramesseum. And this is another important site. It's on the west side of the Nile, mostly where people are buried. And so it's not a far drive from the Valley of the Kings that we had just come from. I think we were in the tomb of Ramses the 13th. So, and these are just different scenes at the Ramesseum. And so this place is actually called the Temple of Time and Timelessness. It was called this because in the daytime, the passage of the sun over the temple was marked by priests to record the time of day, but at night, nothing could be observed but the stars, indicating an overall understanding of no time or timelessness. So it's referred to as the temple of time and timelessness. Here's some more of the temple, just great. And this place right here, this huge, humongous statue fell over, and many speculate it was a time of doing a cataclysmic time that happened 11,000 years or 9,000 years prior. So here we are at the Ramesseum. And here is Ramessu here. Look at how big the statues are compared to people. And that's that statue that I was pointing out earlier, that had fallen over. Now, this picture is important because we're all familiar with the whole story. I mean, during Easter time, they're going to show the Ten Commandments. They're going to show Hero Brenner. They're going to show Charlton Heston, and they're going to try to make you think that these people was ancient Egyptians, and they're going to go into a lot of things. But here at the Ramesseum, you can see. So this is told from the Kemetic side, from the Commission side, where here the followers of the Aten are being run out by the followers of Ammon. See, that's what was really going on. It wasn't the Hebrews, against the Egyptians. It was the followers of Akhenaten that followed Aten, and against the followers of Ammon. And when Akhenaten passed away, many people speculate. They don't know if he was killed or what. To date, they haven't been able to find his body. But after he had passed on, the followers of Ammon, the priesthood of Ammon, ran the followers of the Atan out. And that's depicted on the walls here. I made a little movie.
I think this is a good place to discuss the types of stones and carvings. I think Susan Moore.
Okay, that voice that you heard, that was the voice of Muhammad Fahmy, the best tour guide that you're going to have when you go to Kemet. You should look him up. He's so knowledgeable about so many things about Kemet. And they were asking for Susan Moore. On the trip that I went, they took people that were geologists, that were into stones, because we analyzed what kind of stones that they were used, because they weren't just willy-nilly putting stones, for the monuments. They had a specific purpose, a purpose for harmonic resonance. Anyway, here we can see the Per'ah chasing the followers of the Aten. All right. I'm going into a different phase now, but I think I'm gonna skip that part. But there's one thing that I wanted to. There's a couple of things I wanted to say. Okay, and now this is in Stephen's book, From Light to Darkness. He said the word Hebrew, according to the wisdom teachings of Abdal Hakim Awiyan, was derived from the Commission word keperu, the plural of keper, the scarab beetle that signifies the first stage of the sun, the dawn. The Hebrews were considered to be indigenous Commission people, 12 tribes of the original 42 tribes of Kemet, known as the Sesh, the people. So that's where the word Hebrew comes. It doesn't come from Haribru or working class, but it actually comes from Keperu, because people were into those different ages. I'm not going to take up your time trying to explain the whole thing, because it's a long story. I would strongly recommend that you get the book From Light to Darkness by Stephen Mailer. All right, now getting back to where I was, because I'm going into something. Everything that I talk about, I feel like, is controversial. So, we talk about baptism. They were already doing baptism. John the Baptist didn't start that. People are, and here they're doing the baptism. And those of you that are wearing side locks, they were already doing that. Thousands of years ago. Here they're baptizing the body, the cot. Now I'm switching to Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, that whole area. And so, archaeologists have found this Jericho skull, and when they reconstruct it, this is the facial reconstruction. So, in a sense, Hebrew Israelites are correct. Those first ancient Hebrews were African people. Here are some Hebrew singers, and those rastas that talk about the ancient Jews having dreadlocks. Here they are, and it looks like, I wish we could recreate their music. Look at that tambourine. They got a tambourine. They got like a harp. They mashing it. All right, and here's a close-up version of them. Look at the features, the Africoid features that many of us don't like. Sometimes we don't like our nose, our lips, and our skin. If we could get past these 4 issues, our hair, our nose, our lips, and our skin, we would be so much further ahead. All right, and here's a close-up. Ancient Hebrews. Here are some Hebrews that are not depicted in such a great light. Here they are. They're being fed upon by animals and birds. But check out the people. Who are the Hebrews? Is our topic today. Now this picture here, it's one of my favorite. This is found in the British Museum. From the British Museum in London, the afro-haired men shown above are the ancient Israelites known as the Hebrews. The image you are looking at is by the Assyrians who destroyed Israel 3,000 years ago. As confirmed by the image, the Hebrews who wrote the Bible were black people. The Bible, among other things, tells the history of the Hebrews. Therefore, what this revelation tells us is the Bible is the black man's history. And this is where it comes from. So now look at the Assyrians, and then look at the Hebrews. I mean, they're essentially the same people. And this goes back to 700 BC. Here it is again. Look at these. These are the Assyrians. These are the Hebrews. Maybe look like some of your cousins. And here's another representation of them. Maybe this is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't know. Now I want to get to, I'm moving on to Greece for a minute. So now I showed this, I think, a couple of times before, and Earth Mama was like, what? So I talked about, now this is Circe. and this is Ulysses. And so now Circe, in the Iliad and the Odyssey, she was the person who invited men into her house, gave them something to eat and drink, turned them into swine, and fed upon them. Okay, this is Circe. Look at her. Okay. And you know, if we want to break down the word church, so the word church comes from Circe. Yes. Let me read that. So what or who is Kirk or Circe? Why would the King James order a derivative of this name to replace the true Yeshua used to identify his followers? Kirk, or Circe, as she would be called in English today, church, was a Greek goddess, Pharmelica, a witch or sorceress who lived on the island of Asia, is the most ancient form of the name Gia, the pagan goddess of fertility. She was the daughter of the sun god Helios and had the power to change men into lions, wolves, and especially swines. The animals would retain their human senses but be trapped in animal bodies. I think this is interesting because the word church comes from the word Circe. Now you can look this up. You know, this is not just Papa Alkebulan speculation. You can look this up. I first heard this from Jordan Maxwell. And you can research him, Jordan Maxwell. So the word church comes from the word Kirk, which comes from the word Circe. And Circe is the one who invited men into her house, changed them into swine, and fed on them, which is still happening today. Here's another representation. She turned somebody into a pig. Here she is again. See, he's getting ready to change. On a vase. Here, she's changed a whole bunch of people. Half horse, half... What was in that drink she had? Now I'm moving on. So, as we go on in history, now this is a very old representation of Jesus, the Christ, or Yeshua, the Christ, the Charis, and his disciples. It's found in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. And so now I think if we're going to be Christian, we should at least have the deity and the people looking like us so that we could relate to them more. We could really internalize who they were. So these are the old pictures. Here. Now, before they used to portray Christ, you know, on the cross, you know, they used to portray Christ with a lamb around his neck. And so this and the next few are from the catacombs of Domelita. And you can find these pictures. The catacombs of Domelita. Here is an original Lord's Supper. Look at these guys. And this is in the catacombs of Domelita. Who are the Hebrews? Here again, this is from the 2nd century catacombs. Yeshua and his disciples. Kind of look like, remember Ben Wallace that used to play for the Detroit Pistons? You know, a lot of times he would have his hair cornrow, but sometimes he would take his hair down, and so this picture of Jesus kind of reminds me of Ben Wallace. I used to include that in these presentations, but for some reason it slipped my mind. I didn't put it in. But look at Ben Wallace and then look at that picture. You can see the resemblance. Now, Astro Kwesi, in his video, very good video, called African Origin of Christianity, he relates that he was in the British Museum. He came in with all of this equipment, and he saw a brother there who was like a security guard or somebody that worked there, and he said, where are you going? He says, I'm trying to tell our story. He took him down to the basement, and there was this picture, or this statue, this figurine. And here again, Christ with a lamb around his neck. Here's some more from the catacombs of Domalit. Again and again. Here, this is Abraham. This is a picture of Abraham. You know the story of Abraham. He's getting ready to sacrifice his son because God told him, "Hey, I want to see if you're really down for me. You know, would you do anything I ask?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, get your son and sacrifice him." And here he is. He's got his sword. He's getting ready to sacrifice his son. And then, I mean, the way they tell the story, they make God really cold blooded. Then he's like, "Hey, look, I'm just kidding, man. I just want to see if you were really going to do it." But anyway, they drew a picture about that. This is the way that the Jews looked to the Romans in those days. Now, there's these people, there's the Canaanites, there's the Phoenicians, all these are the same people. And these are statues that are found like 1100 BC in Spain. You know, we still have those features, but a lot of times we don't consider those beautiful. But we are beautiful. But we don't. These are not the only type of features that African people have. We go from snow to crow, and we have varying textures of hair, varying, sizes of noses and lips, but these ones are unmistakably African. This is a Canaanite taken from Kemet. Here he is. He's wearing the locks. He's got, he looks like some people I know right now. These are the Canaanites. And they wear the fezzes. A lot of us now are wearing fezzes now because, we are taught that this is our way, this is our original tradition. Not necessarily, but it's a very ancient tradition. And these are the Canaanites. Here's some Canaanites here. So the question is, who are the Hebrews? The Hebrews were just a branch of the Cometians, the Kemetic people that left during several phases called the Exodus. They left and mixed with other black people called the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, and they gelled to become what we know as the Israelites, the Jews, etc. Here's the story of Jonah and the whale. This is an inscription from Russia going back to the 11th century AD, and these are Hebrews. See how they're depicted? This is a photograph in 1930 of two Canaanites in Palestine before the genocide. Black people are all over. Don't be surprised. You go to China, you go to those ancient ruins and statues, you're going to find some black people. You go to Vietnam, you go to Angkor Wat, the ancient ruin, you're going to find some black people. We're all over the world. Even when the Pope was the outgoing Pope and the incoming Pope, they got in their private quarters to say a prayer to the Black Madonna and Child. Sisters and brothers, brothers especially, we need to get back to the high recognition of that Madonna. I'm not talking about the one that, I'm not talking about the one now that lives in England that, was big in the 80s. I'm talking about the original Madonna. Here they are. They couldn't help it. They said, well, okay, before we do anything, we need to go and pray to the black woman. Here, this is a picture of Yeshua in Russia. These are the Russian icons. And when I look at it, it kind of looks like Colin Kaepernick. Can you see the connection? Now, this is a coin. Justinian, the Roman emperor, is on one side, and Yeshua, the Christ, is on the other. He's got his fro. 2nd century. Excuse me. It's not the 2nd century, more like the 6th century. AD. So, if you go to a church, sisters and brothers, I'm talking to African Americans now. If you go to a church and it's got like white Jesus, white angels, and that religious institution is brainwashing you. I'm not saying they're not doing good works, but if you have to see that image all the time, that going into your mind, that lowers your self-esteem. That actually causes you not to fully identify with the religion that you say you believe in. All right, now I showed this before. This is J.A. Rogers. He's clowning National Geographic because the caption underneath it says, the Ethiopians have pronounced Semitic features. Kinky hair, broad lips, woolly hair, kinky hair, but otherwise not Negroid. So these people are not black. We showed the picture of Akhenaten and his family. And here, this is a princess from Rwanda with one of them hook heads like Akhenaten and his wife. This is a handsome guy. Straight brother. But I guess because it looks like he has a Jerry curl, he's not black either. Who are the Hebrews? Now, there is a tribe in South Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, around in that area. And they are referred to as the Limba tribe. Now, when I first found out about this was so funny to me. The Limba tribe, like Rush Limba tribe. And then there's a sub-clan underneath it called the Buba or the Bubba clan. They have more Jewish DNA than Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews. And I found this out in the book, The Africans Who Wrote the Bible by Nana Banchi Darkwa. And in there he has the genetic study of some Jewish people wanted to do a genetic study on Cohens. So a lot of times when you see a person and their name is Cohen, they trace their lineage back to Aaron, the priest, the high priest like Moses' brother. And so the priests generally are called Cohen, and they have a specific type of Y chromosome. So this guy did this whole, genetic study, and what he found out was here in Africa is this tribe and this clan, the Limba tribe and the Bubba or Buba, I'm not sure exactly how that's pronounced, clan has more Jewish DNA per capita than most Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews. And so, but they tried to flip it around and say, well, okay, some Jews came and they went into South Africa and then they became black. No, that's not how genetics works. It goes the other way around. It starts out black, and then the thing about the African or the Africoid genetic genome, I'm not going into any kind of racial superiority or anything, but the African genetic genome can produce all the other colors, all the other phenotypes of the human experience, but they can't produce him. And so many people, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Neely Fuller, the late Dr. Richard King, they said this is why we are persecuted, because our genes are dominant. Anyway, I'm going to conclude today. I think I've beat this to death. Oh, just as an aside, so Israel. This is El. El is associated with the Canaanite deity, and look, he's dressed like Osiris or Wasir. And here he is, El and Yahweh. All right, I'm going to conclude now.
I have a question for you.
Okay, what is your question?
How does Hebrew get Jew? A nickname?
No. Jew actually comes from the specific tribe of Judea. And at some point, they just began to refer to, all of them as Jews. But it originally comes from the word Judea. So there's 12 tribes, and I can't name them all. There's a song by, who is that song? It's a reggae song. And it's, Mikey Dread. And he connects the astrological signs with the tribes of Judah. So he can run down Naphtali, Benjamin, Zebulun, all these different tribes. And one of those tribes is Judah. And it's associated with a month. So Judah is like actually associated with the month of July. And that's why, Haile Selassie is born in that month. He's the lion of the tribe of Judah, etc. So at some point, and you know what, I don't know the specifics, but Stephen addresses that in his book, how it goes from Keperu to Hebrew to Israelite to Jew. But there's a progression that occurs over time. But specifically, and I could be wrong, so you look this up, but I believe that the word Jew comes from that tribe Judea or Judea.
The next question is, so what is the linkage between Egyptians, as most people will call them, and Hebrews? Are they the same people?
They're the same people. They're the same people. That's what is being shown here. So they come here. There's the 12 tribes in an Egyptian tomb. And here's Moses, a follower, executing the works of the Akhenaten. And you go to the Ramesseum, here they are being run out of Kemet. They're the same people. As a matter of fact, one of the stories, so Moses, he goes, he leaves, he finds out, oh my God, I'm a Hebrew, and he goes and he goes out in the wilderness, and he sees some women getting some water, and and they're attacked, and then because he knows martial arts and he's been trained as a prince, he comes in, takes his staff and whoops the guys upside the head, and then these women take him to their tent, to their father Jethro, and they say that Egyptian helped us.
Wow.
So there's little things that say. There's also a book that's written by Finkelstein and Silberman. It's called The Bible Unearthed, where they essentially say the same thing. Well, what they're saying is that the Hebrew people, or the people that we now call Jews, are really Canaanites. I mean, and so if you look at their language, that's where it comes from.
Okay, so stay on that real quick for me.
Okay, all right.
'Cause, I mean, we're gonna hit this.
All right.
But where do the Muslims fit into this? Is it just a dress code? Like, where do they fit into this?
So I was listening to this brother, and I would sure hate to debate this guy. His name is Brother Polite, and he was debating. Brother Polite. So he was debating Dr. Ali Muhammad. I didn't like the way that they was doing it because it was like it was a heavyweight championship.
That's how they do it.
You
Yeah.
know, and you know, I think something is getting lost in there. But what he ended up saying, he mentioned books like the Peshitta. He was saying that in that book, basically he was saying that, and I thought this was astounding. This was an astounding statement that happens to be true. He said Arabic was not a written language when the Quran was revealed to Muhammad. What were they using? They were using Syriac. And so in the Peshitta, Jesus is referred to as a Muhammad because that word means worthy to be praised. And then he goes on into another thing where the translation of some of the Quran is not quite understood because there's some diacritical marks that are used in Syriac that, you know, they just took that written language, because this was the lingua franca of that region, and that's how they wrote their book. But some of the things were misinterpreted, one of which being the 72 brown-eyed virgins. That really refers to grapes. Not, boy, those guys is going to really be upset when they get to heaven, and they're going to be looking for some 72 ever virgins, and they're going to be giving them grapes. So and Dr. Ben used to say that Muhammad was taught the fundamentals of Coptic Christianity by Bilal, upon which he built a religion called Islam. Okay, and also something that you need to know, and this is in Sheikh Anta Diop's, this is in the notes in Sheikh Anta Diop's African origin of African origin of Egyptian civilization. Got so many titles in my head. But he says that, and most people know this, that they were already making the pilgrimage to Mecca 1,000 years before Muhammad was born. That Kaaba, that black meteorite stone, was given to Arabia. At one point, Southern Arabia and Ethiopia were one kingdom, and most people. So in Islam, the Queen of Sheba is known as Belkis, and in Christianity is known as the Queen of Sheba. But she was the ruler of those regions, and they were already the Quraysh tribe, etc. They were already making the pilgrimage, and then they had this revolution. Now, Stephen would, if he was here, and I've heard other people say, that we went from a matriarchal to a patriarchal. And so generally, not all the time, but generally, black people are matriarchal. So the people in Southern Arabia, the black people, and it's referred to as Arabia Felix or Arabia Happy, and then you have Arabia Deserta, or the desert. So the so-called Indo-European Semitic people, when they came and they mixed with the African people who built cities, you know, the patriarchy took over, as it did in many places. Wayne Chandler breaks this down very well in his book Ancient Future. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, if I've gone too far, but so if you just look at this, the way that the languages break down, they start here at the Canaanite, and then okay, there's Southern Arabian, Syriac, Hebrew, Nabatean, and from this Nabatean you get Arabic. Now, I didn't make this chart up.
So a lot of the stuff that we get comes from the made up stuff.
Yes.
Then the Asian stuff. Last question.
Okay.
How did the Jews and the Arabs become white people?
I think if you now there's a couple of traditions or stories or recollections about this, reckonings about this. So let's just say this. The ancient Jews, the Hebrews, the Jews, were black people. And then they went into Europe and spent 2,000 years. It's just like us as black people in the Americas. You know, over time, we're not as dark as we used to be when we first came here. We're in a different hemisphere. The sun isn't as strong, and then we've had a lot of intermixing, either forced or because our minds were that way, and so people that were Jewish, they went into Europe and mixed in with people, and over 2,000 years, that's what you got. But I've heard, and I think this is in one of J.A. Rogers' books, that the first people to press their hair in this country were Jews. Because you see some Jewish people, I mean, even today, so you can see the Africoid mixture. Now, some people say, okay, the Jews come from the Khazars, and they adopted, Judaism, so Khazars was, someplace like, around the Caucasus Mountains someplace, and they were very warlike, and they adopted Judaism, and those are the Jews that we're dealing with, and particularly the Ashkenazi Jews. I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say that if you start with, okay, these were black people coming into Europe, spending 2,000 years at a place, that's how they evolved. That's Papa Alkebulan's.
So there's no mixture with Neanderthals? Because they don't look like African people. Like, even if we light a dark, we still look like African people. They do not look like African people. They look like Europeans.
I just read an article, and there are a number of articles that say that, okay, African people don't have the
DNA marker,
Neanderthal marker, and that people that we've come to know as Caucasoid have like a 4 to 10% of Neanderthal. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but I don't know, but okay, we're looking for explanations why they act like this, and so maybe this is the reason.
I only asked that question because I can see if, like, when you're a Christian, that's a faith. It's not a ethnic group.
Right.
And so you can look like anybody and be a Christian.
Sure.
But it seems like with the Jewish tradition, it's more so of the look, like an ethnicity. They can only claim being Jewish, and I don't know how they went from being a religious group to an ethnicity, and why is a distinction on European Jews as opposed to they're in a place where people have color and Jesus had color. How do they then become white?
I would just say
that's all. Just
no. So here again, okay, this is somebody in Jericho. You know that song, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is this is his facial reconstruction. You know, I didn't make these pictures up. You know, that's the way the people look. You know, but I'm just saying, look at this guy. He's got his fro, his beard. These are some pottery. You know, here they were taken prisoner. I didn't make this up. You know, this is in the British Museum. A lot of us don't go to the British Museum.
No.
We don't see this. Okay, but if I'm telling you, if we stay here, you know, another 1,000 years, you know, it'll be a faint resemblance of how we used to look. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So, but all those people from that region, these are Assyrians. That's the way they look. They don't look too much different.
Right now.
Than the Jews. It's the same as, like, okay, in Nigeria, different ethnic groups, sometimes they don't get along. So it's the same, like if Yorubas or Igbos were persecuting each other, or Hausas were persecuting each other, or some other tribes, you know, or in Ethiopia, you know, you have the Shoa people, you know, the Amhara people, and then they're persecuting the Oromo, you know, Hutus and Tutsis, you know what I mean? So that's
okay.
All right. Thank you for good questions. You know, there's a lot to this. This is just a springboard. Again, we started out, who are the Hebrews? We started with Sigmund Freud, Moses and monotheism. And then did I say that Sigmund Freud was on cocaine?
You did.
I did. Because he looked coked up right there.
He leaned back, way back, with his mind on his money,
yeah. So back then it was legal. Many people do not know that Coca-Cola used to contain cocaine, and it was marketed as a health drink. That's right.
Wow, that's deep.
Okay, so I want to livicate this to the Akhenaten, and I have a friend. I know he sometimes watches this. His name is Alan. Alan, don't this look like Eddie? This looks like Eddie Hill. And I hope you see this, Alan, because I've always thought that Akhenaten looks like, or Eddie looks like Akhenaten. Anyway, that's somebody we grew up with. All right. Well, with that, Earth Mama, thank you so much for allowing me to come in and you know, give my perspectives on this. It's certainly not an exhaustive thing. It's just some things that I pulled together so that other people can actually, you know, investigate and drill down, go further than what I did. You know, my references were From Light to Darkness by Stephen Mailer, Moses and Monotheism. You know, we looked at this. This is a heavy one for me. Circe and the word church.
Yeah, that was
Okay, so you can, and then you can go online and go to the catacombs of Domelita, and you can find these pictures. All right. Well, thank you again for tuning in. We love to see you. We love to hear your comments. We love to answer your questions. If you have any further questions, we'll try to answer them as best I can. Life, prosperity, and health. Uncle Job Sanel. Live up.